Hey friends, welcome to the Empowered Homes podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to be a resource to connect church and home. And today I am sitting with the one and only Joe Landi. Joe, what's up, man?
The one and only, huh?
The one and
A
only.
legend in my own mind is, I guess, what it is.
You are a legend. You are a legend. Well, I got you on today because we're going to talk about this month with Empowered Homes, and kind of our theme is deeper. And we're looking at finding deeper intimacy with God and with others. And,
Sure.
we got a ton of great resources that we've been throwing out all month, and this podcast is just a kind of a conversation of all of that that we've been kind of going through because, you know, we were praying through, like, you know, what are some resources that parents and couples need? And it's Valentine's month, and February is always about intimacy and love and all of those things. And so we wanted to go a little bit deeper.
Sure.
No pun intended or pun intended. And so we wanted to challenge ourselves and everyone that follows along with Empowered Homes and checks out resources to really deepen their intimacy with the Lord and what that looks like, but also you can't shy away from your intimacy with others.
Sure.
And so we're talking about marriage. We got a ton of great resources. You can find all that in the description of the podcast as you're listening. But Joseph, here's the question.
Oh, boy.
Do you prefer Joseph or Joe?
Joe, whatever. I've been called worse.
Joseph.
So whatever.
Okay.
You know.
Josephina. Yeah.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
Starts like Joe. Sounds like it's good with me.
So, Joe, question before we jump into today's conversation. What is the greatest Valentine's gift that you've given Meg, that you gave her, and you were like, I'm the man?
Man, we're simple people, man. We just love spending time together. You know, I think for Megan, she loves gifts, absolutely. Some pearl earrings, I've gotten her before, not for necessarily for Valentine's Day, but we just like going out and hanging out, having a nice dinner, being by ourselves. Actually, right now, just a night away, you know, would be huge right now. It's a busy season. You know, I'm sure like a lot of people listening, you start the year off like out of a shotgun, and you just get going and stuff like that. And you get to this time, it's good to just slow down and be together. How about you?
You're putting me on?
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot, man. What do you get Jen?
I had the question for you. I didn't think of the answer.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're pretty simple too. A while back, like, Jen was adamant about flowers are a waste of money, don't get flowers. But every time I get her flowers, she like...
Flowers are good.
It's special.
Gentlemen, if you're listening, flowers are good.
It's simple. So
Megan likes flowers. I will say that. Yeah.
I'll give you an insider hack.
Okay.
Costco has great flowers.
Okay. Insider hack.
Yeah.
Right, good.
Yeah. If you don't tell them it's from Costco, but they do have good flowers.
Hey, it's good.
But no, we like to go to dinner and hang out and stuff. But Valentine's Day, it's not. We don't want that to be the day that we're like, oh, finally we spent some time together.
Exactly.
We want it to be more of a regular thing. So
Certainly.
We'll hit up lunch or do something just us. It'll be fun. But so enough about Valentine's Day, all that stuff. As we talk about moving into a deeper intimacy with God, I wanted to talk with you because I've heard you share this with other parents and other people. When it comes to deeper relationships with fellow believers, you know, we're co-created with, it's in our DNA to want to be in community. God wired us that way. Jesus spoke over his disciples and his people over and over about being in community. So as believers, we can't fall into the trap of believing, as long as I have deep intimacy with the Lord, I'm good.
Right.
And so have you ever heard that in your ministry experience? Like, I'll spend time by myself or
Yeah, and I've heard it more like, well, wait, I don't need the church. I can just be, you know, myself and with the Lord. That's really what matters and whatnot. And while it's true in one sense, I think no, I don't want anyone to miss the point. Our relationship with the Lord is primary. That is the most important relationship we can ever have, and that relationship has to be right. However, the church community is a gift. Like you said earlier, it's a DNA, it's a wiring in us. And if that is missing, if we are not in relationship with other people, it says something about the condition of our heart, I think. It says how well we're doing in life and whatnot. So to make it like a little like, oh, I don't really need the church, or I don't need people. I can just do it myself. Well, it's kind of a dangerous thing.
Yeah,
it's a dangerous mindset to have.
Yeah,
for a lot of reasons, which we can probably go into later. But
yeah. And I mean, I've heard it. I don't need to go to church on Sundays because I'll read my Bible and I spend time with the Lord, which is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with those things. But when Jesus left, he said, "Go therefore make disciples," and so he put into the motion the church becoming the body of Christ, and we need each other. And so today, I want us to focus on 3 relationships within the body that I think are fundamental. They're scriptural, they're biblical. We see them in the New Testament for sure, all through Paul's writings and the early church in Acts. We see these 3 relationships. And, a lot of times we look at doing life with other believers, and sometimes it can be a burden. And it's like, man, I've got to do this, or I've got to, make this person happy, or there's so many relationship dynamics. And so I want to just kind of table all of that. So if you're listening, you're like, yeah, but okay, just hear us out first.
That's a good call.
Hear us out first, and then we'll get into some of those dynamics. But three major relationships that you share. Give us a overview of those 3 types of relationships, and then we'll dig into each one.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful. There's a ministry called Lead 222, led by Bobo Shears up in Illinois, who I met years ago, who's really influenced my understanding, and what Bo calls it is a be with constellation. So if you consider yourself
a be with
constellation, be with, in the Gospels, it talks about Jesus chose 12 to be with him, and the idea being these are close, intimate relationships that Jesus chose to be with him. And so the constellation, the people that you surround yourself with, has to be people that you are conscientiously choosing to be with. And so I learned, you talk about mentors, older, wiser people that are in your life, that are pouring into you, that you're receiving from, that are discipling you, that you look up to, that you respect. Maybe they're a little ahead in life with where you're at, with maybe their family or in spiritual maturity especially. But so you have older, wiser mentors. Then you have peers.
Yeah.
People that are, I would say those are people that are in the trenches with you, that are the same season of life with you, that are going through the similar things. Maybe have their kids are the same age. Maybe you're similar in age in marriage, but they're the people that you're locking arms with. You're encouraging one another. You're kind of sharpening, and you know them well enough to go, hey, are you good? Like, how's everything going? You're doing life with them in that aspect. And then, of course, there's the younger folks. You've got the older, wiser, now you've got the younger people that you are mentored with. And some people use, you could say the old-fashioned word disciples, you could say mentee, but they're people that you're pouring into, that you are invested in, because I think that's really a full picture of what discipleship really should be.
Yeah.
Is I'm being discipled by older, wiser people. I've got people that are next to me that we're encouraging one another in discipleship. And then, of course, I'm pouring into someone. Yeah. I feel like that's a missing piece a lot of times for people, is they don't understand the blessing it is really to pour into people. Yeah. And that can be your kids. That can simply be your kids. Yeah. That could be in a ministry that you're a part of at the church, pouring into kids. But yeah, that's like a full.
So the 3, you have those above, and then you have your peers that are with you, and then those younger. Yep. And so in Scripture, we see that Jesus modeled that as a mentor. He had his disciples, he had some peers with them, and then he was constantly pouring into younger. We see that in the early church when we have Paul. So Paul comes on the scene, he encounters Jesus, and he's transformed. And then he has a peer, Barnabas, that pulls him into the group, and Barnabas becomes that friend, that like-hearted person that's encourager. That's what his name is, the encourager. And so you have that, and then Paul doesn't end there. He sees within Timothy, and we read all through 1st and 2nd Timothy of how much he cared for and poured in and invested and encouraged Timothy. And so we see it not only in Jesus, but we also see it in the early church, where you have a Paul who's that mentor type. Then you have the Barnabases that are with you in the trenches, locked arms. And then you have younger, the Timothys, that maybe you go a step ahead, but you're constantly pouring in and discipling them. I think that's a model for relationships as Christians that we should all have.
Absolutely.
But the reality of the church is, if you polled the church, I mean, there's not a whole lot of percentage to say, yes, I have an identified mentor or somebody.
Right.
You might say, oh, I got a guy that, I look up to or whatever, or I have a lady who, encourages me or whatever. And then I think the peers, the Barnabases, I think we that's a little easier because we're doing life together. We can encourage each other. But to be intentional with that and go even further, it takes some risk to be vulnerable with those people. And then you mentioned the kids being part of your Timothy. Absolutely.
Right.
Like my kids are my responsibility to disciple and train, but also being aware that part of discipleship is bringing other younger believers on. So let's camp out for a second on mentors, that Paul relationship. Do you have a mentor in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm blessed to be able to work with, one of my greatest mentors, I would say. And our executive pastor here, Brad Fleury, I think he's a mentor in a lot of ways for me. But, I do want to say, too, I feel like the reason it's so difficult to find those mentors, there's a couple of reasons. To find mentors, how it's difficult. Back when you read the gospel and Jesus says to his disciples, "Hey, come follow me."
Yeah, you come with me. Yeah,
and that wasn't like an unheard of thing. That was just like, oh man, what an honor. Here's a rabbi choosing me and asking me to come. Whereas in our culture today, if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, I want you to follow me," you'd be like red flags everywhere. Like, what? Are you serious? Like, who is this? Like what is going on? What's wrong? Exactly. What do you want from me? All this stuff. And on top of that, I think there's a lot of people that, look, there's two types of people I feel like in the world. One is like, I will give you my trust right away. Like I will trust you until you prove me otherwise. And then there's the other people that are going to say, I ain't trusting you at all until you prove that I can trust you. So you've got these cultural influences that I think are barriers to us finding mentors. And so even when I mentioned Brad being a mentor, it wasn't like Brad came up to me and said, "Hey, Joe, I want you to follow me. This is the thing." I just observed his life. And I know he's a mentor of yours too, Bobby. You just observe his life, the way he carries himself, the way he loves his wife, the way he loves his kids, the way he goes about, his ministry and his calling. It's those things that you're just like, I want to follow that. And so he becomes your mentor and you ask him questions and they're informal. At least that's how it looks in our relationship, but we're doing life together. We know each other. And so, it's important to have people like that in your life. Yeah.
And I would, the caveat that I would add for mentorship is age does not equal wisdom. And so I know some older guys that I would not want to speak into my life. So just because they're older does not mean they have wisdom. I think wisdom's a big part of discerning, okay, here's somebody that I want to be a mentor or invest in me or, do life with. And so I have an older guy that I could be his kid, but also have some mentors that are just a few years older than me that have gone before me. And I think the key with one, we have to humble ourselves to be able to allow these people to speak into these men to speak into our life. One of the key things. So if you're listening, you're like, all right, I get that. I want a mentor. What do I do? I would encourage. 9 times out of 10, if it is a person who is upstanding, who loves Jesus, who's following close to the Lord, they have a deep intimacy with God, and you approach them and say, "Hey, would you spend some time with me?" And just in a more formal setting, or even if it's just, "Hey, will you have lunch with me once a month, and I can just ask you questions?" 9 times out of 10, that person's going to say, "Absolutely, I would be honored." But we have in our mind this idea, like, if I'm vulnerable enough to ask, I'm going to get rejected. They're going to say no, and then I'm out. But for the most part, most people will say yes.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that that's how we have to almost go about it. Is the mentee has to ask the mentor, "Hey, can we grab coffee? Can we hang out?" But honestly, and I would throw in there a couple of tips, is just observe people around you that you look up to, that you respect, and if you find those people, it's simply, hey, can we grab coffee sometime? I just got a couple questions I want to ask you. You don't need to ask them to commit to you for
Exactly.
like, hey, I want you to mentor me and do all these things. But hey, can we grab coffee? I've got some questions I just want to run by you. And if it develops into a deeper relationship, that's where you want to start.
Yeah.
But like I encourage, like, just kind of wait out and just see how deep you guys want to go. And you got to start somewhere. And again, I think you make a good point, though. I think there's a lot of barriers to doing that, and there's a fear of rejection, and there's the fear of, hey, your own woundings maybe from your own upbringing of like, hey, I've been rejected here. But you've got to overcome those, because it's worth it having older, wiser people in your life. It's almost like it provides kind of guidance, protection. It provides kind of a safe harbor for you, like as you go through life. I mean, there's a lot of benefits.
There's so many benefits. And as we're looking at a deeper intimacy with the Lord, having someone that's older and wiser that's pouring into you, for me and my own experience, when I know I have those people in my life, I'm closer and more connected in a deeper way to the Lord, because I know how I'm living, how I'm going through my day to day. When I blow up or I mess up or do something, I know, man, Monday when I meet with my mentor at 2:30, I've got something to talk about. Right. And I know I've got an ally that's older than me. Doesn't care what I say. Right. They're gonna support and encourage me. So having a mentor is a big deal. And like you said, it may be as informal as coffee, but starting there may form into more of a meaningful relationship. So don't be afraid of and again, for a lot of folks, it's humbling yourself to, a mentor may not be in your line of work. It may not be, the person that you think is going to be a fit for you. It may be someone off the wall.
And it's okay to have multiple mentors.
Yes.
Work mentor. If you got people that you respect at work, if you got people that you respect just in life in general, or certainly spiritual mentors. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to have, and it's okay to have different seasons of people in your life at different seasons of life. So it's totally appropriate.
Yeah. So looking above, you have those Pauls, you have those mentors. Now, we won't spend a lot of time on peers. I think most of us understand those like-hearted peers, those healthy relationships, as you mention a lot of times when I hear you share, it's the healthy. Explain that word healthy, because there's a difference in just having a peer, but then having healthy peers is a big thing. Why is that such a big thing?
Yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast, of course, but... when I think of healthy peers, healthy relationships, I mean, just good relationships with boundaries, healthy from the standpoint of, you've got those relationships that sometimes are a lot of work that you have to kind of tiptoe around, that you're kind of like, I don't know if I can say this, or, you're not really receiving from them, or, you want to have relationships that, hey, there's just mutual trust. There's assuming the best of one another. There's, hey, I'm going to give you my trust, and like even if trust maybe is seemingly broke, we're going to work through it. We're going to encourage one another, because I think you said at the beginning, like, people are just messy. Like, this is what we're in.
Our lives are messy.
It's messy, and it's going to be messed up. And that's why Jesus talked a lot about forgiveness. It's why he talked a lot about, like turning the other cheek and working well with one another. It's like, in our culture today, we have so much of like this whole, hey, I'm done with you kind of mentality if you hurt me or offend me right away. But that's not how the people of God should be. We should be gracious. We should be kind. We should go to people and ask for forgiveness. And I know it's tough. I've been there. I'm even walking through that with some people right now that I'm praying through. I was just praying through this morning. Lord, how do I approach this? How do I work this? But it's worth it because you want those deeper relationships. But again, you're not going to have crazy awesome relationships with everybody. We have a great relationship, dude. We do a lot of stuff together, our families, which is fun. There's mutual trust, respect. I love that. So that's fun, man. And you're rooting for my family. I'm rooting for your family. When you speak to my kids, I love it. I know it's mutual. When I'm speaking into your kids, I love it. So to find those teammates is a good thing to have.
I think of, and not to put a war analogy on it, but the healthy peers are the ones that are in the trenches with you. And so you're battling together, you're fighting together, you're going through life together. but it can't be everybody. I think that's the key. And a lot of times we're like, well, everybody's in, and that's great. And we want to be inclusive. Absolutely.
Right.
But I think this deeper relationship with peers are those who are really like-hearted, and you're not going to shock them with what you tell them. Right. You're not going to scare them away. But you mentioned the thing, and the greatest advice I was given early in ministry was to understand that relationships are co-created. And so when you're spending time with peers and you may have this closeness, if you feel like you're constantly being the one to drive the conversation, to go through, you're the one that's hinging everything together, that's not necessarily healthy.
Right.
And so that's where you create boundaries and you understand, when you have the peer relationships of other believers who you feel like you have to work towards it and you have to constantly there may be something, a check in your spirit to be like, okay, what is this relationship really? And it's okay just to be friends. That's not what we're talking about. We want to be friends with everybody, be kind and gracious, but like you said, having those like-hearted people who you can really and I boil it down to this. When you're looking at those peers, when you have your best day, like for me, when Charlie passes math, and I'm pumped, and I've had this conversation with other peers, my friends, like we're struggling with math, who am I texting?
Sure.
That's the peers that you're doing life
that's
with.
cool.
When I have my worst day, when I find out some crazy heartbreaking news, who am I texting?
Right.
I think that's the litmus test of okay, who are those peers that you're really doing? Who do you text? We have a ton of friends. That's great. But we got to have those deep relationships with people who are in the same boat as us.
And I think that's the key to developing those relationships is recognizing that the season that you're with and the shared experiences of the people that you're around. And so use those. One of the things I prayed through, and again, I got this from my mentor, Brad. One thing I saw him do was with some of his son's friends, he reached out to some of their dads and said, hey, let's do breakfast on Fridays, breakfast with the boys on Fridays. And so I've done that. I found some men that are in the same, have Logan's age boys, and we've gotten together and we've started doing breakfast on Fridays. And honestly, I didn't know those guys very, very well at all. I just knew these are kids that go to school with Logan that he knows. I know they go to church with me, so let's invite them out and see what happens. And honestly, I've really gotten to enjoy those guys. Yeah. I really appreciate those guys, respect them, love them. There's mutual respect and care, and we're still growing in our relationship, but it's good. So it's good to have men that are like speaking into our sons together, and we're trying to do this together because you can't do it alone. Again, it goes back to the bigger picture. If you're doing things alone, you're doing it wrong. So deeper relationships with mentors, deeper relationships with peers, and then this mentee or this Timothy younger. It can be our kids. It should be our kids. Certainly. A lot of times I think we're like, well, your kids are different, but I believe it counts. Oh, please.
I would much rather.
That's your primary.
Yeah, that's your primary. I would much rather not have, someone over here.
Absolutely.
And spend all my time with my own kids.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times I've got to have, somebody I'm discipling. Well, you are. If you have any children in your house, you are. However, there's something powerful about investing in, like you mentioned, a lot of times the mentees asking the older, but it's powerful when I know someone that's younger. I'm like, hey, can I meet with you for 6 weeks and just get to know you? Right. And not that I have all the answers, not that I have it all figured out, but I see something in you, and I just want to invest some time with you. And when I do those things, 99.98% of the time, I get so much more out of it too. I get encouraged. I get to see someone who is going through something, and I've been through it, and I'm able to be like, hey, it's okay. Like it's not. I remember feeling how you feel right now, but this too shall pass. And so having those younger relationships, I think a lot of times you're older than me, but as we get older, we think of like, all right, instilling and passing on that wisdom. It's just as beneficial for me as it is for the person that I'm pouring into.
For sure. It's rewarding. It's super rewarding.
Yeah.
You know, it's, kind of passing on a legacy. And I don't know, Megan and I got to a point, we had a young couple over a couple years ago, and I looked at Megan afterwards. I said, we're starting to become those couples that are like older with older kids, and we can start talking to people and encouraging them. And she's like, absolutely. Not from a haughty standpoint, but you kind of realize like, oh, wow, yeah, I was just there, and I kind of know exactly what they're going through. Yeah. And these are the things I wish somebody would have told me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And for you to stay quiet on that kind of does a disservice, especially to the body of Christ, for you to see other people kind of like struggling or going through the thing, for you not to, at least offer encouragement or prayer or help, or, hey, would love to grab coffee with you and just kind of see how you're doing. I mean, again, there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. If you're if you're interested in pouring into somebody, to go up to them and say, hey, I want you to follow me and my example, I think our culture says, nah, but hey, you know what? You've been on my heart. I would just love to grab coffee with you. Just want to grab coffee with you and just see how you're doing and how can I pray for you. Oh my gosh, who would say no to that? Especially younger generation. And that's kind of a thing too. You may not have that younger generation asking you, to grab coffee, because again, they could be scared, they could be nervous, they don't know how to
skeptical.
Do that. They don't even know to do that. But man, if somebody came up to him and said, I see you, I want to invest in you, you're on my heart. Man, there's a lot of people that'd be like, I would love to have that in my life. So,
but the younger generation too, to your point, super skeptical of everything because the culture that we're in. Right. You can't trust anything you see on TV or news or any of that stuff. So if I'm an older person going, hey, Joe, man, I'd love to have coffee or whatever, my radar's going ding, ding, ding. Like, what is this going to be about? Like, what, am I going to get chewed out or whatever? And so when I've asked, I'm straight up clear with them, tell them my intentions. Yeah, awesome. You can't be vague about it. Of like, hey, let's grab coffee. And then, because if someone does that to me, my mind's wondering. Yeah, like, what's going on? I'm about to get chewed
What's the agenda?
What's the agenda? They got something that they're going to try to sell me on some pyramid scheme.
Timeshare.
Phone cards, like, So I immediately start getting skeptical. And I think, to a point, we all have that. And so if you see someone and God's placed them on your heart to say, hey, I want to grab coffee with this person and just invest in them, be upfront and tell them. And I think that goes a long ways too, of saying, hey, Joe, I want to grab coffee. Here's why. And, as a dad, here's some stuff I see in you. I want to chat and talk, and if I can be a resource for you at any point, that's my agenda. I've got no agenda. Exactly. And so I think being upfront with that too, especially with the younger generation of skeptics that's coming in, it's only getting worse. I see it in even my kids. They're questioning everything, which is a good thing.
It can be a good thing.
It can be a good thing.
Absolutely.
They need to process and figure things out. But so those three relationships. And I know you're passionate about discipleship. I love seeing the body disciple because, like we said at the beginning, Matthew 28, Jesus said, go make disciples. That was the plan. And then the model that he showed and then the model that the early church displayed was this older, peer, younger constellation of who you're with and who you're spending time with. I think is key for that. So for us, as we talk about having deeper intimacy with the Lord, the question is, if I have these three types of relationships, does that deepen my intimacy with the Lord, or does that pull me away from the Lord?
Well, I think it's both. I think, I have seen when my relationship with the Lord grows, my love for people grow. And then the more I hang out with like-minded people, or even people that I just want to pour into, I've received blessing and grown from that relationship. So I feel like they're mutually inclusive of one another, in the sense that if I grow in one area, I'm gonna make my primary with Jesus, and growing with Him. But man, what a blessing and honor it is when I meet with a mentor. Like I think of a late one of my late mentors, Floyd Gordon. I called him Pops. There's so many times in life where I've thought back to things that Pops has said to me about his faith that has helped strengthen my faith and grow my faith, and even things that I've said to people that I'm pouring into now. And so what a blessing it is that the Lord, I mean, we can't do life. Our life and our faith is meant to be expressed through people, it seems.
Yeah.
You know, and with people. And I love how the Lord made that. I can't imagine any other way. I can't imagine being the only person in the universe or living in isolation. I mean, we've seen the last couple of years the difficulties of isolation. So if there's any evidence that we need to see, man, it's there, that we need one another. But these relationships should be encouraging one another to grow. Even a mentoring relationship. If I'm mentoring someone, to me, that grows my relationship with the Lord because I need to depend on Him in order to mentor this person, in order to pour into this person and whatnot. It holds me accountable in a lot of ways because I know somebody's looking up to me for a lot of like input and ideas and stuff like that. So all these relationships should grow one another. I firmly believe that.
I agree. We want deep intimacy with the Lord to deepen our walk in a relationship with Him. And now the overflow, that should pour into all of our relationships. But our relationships can also draw us closer to the Lord. It's a beautiful thing, the way God created and designed us. But the reality is we're humans and we're messy. And so for the listener, we'll close on this is, you say, hey, I want a mentor. I want peers and I want to be a mentor. It's not sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it is difficult. There's some hard times, but it is worth the effort, the energy. I've had mentors where I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I what they're talking about. I've had peers that I thought were like-hearted in the trenches with me that all of a sudden they're ghosted. They're just can't find them anymore. Or I've had those who get upset with me because I went and did something else with someone else. That's messy. And then, I've had those younger relationships where I look back and I'm like, what? I spent all this time and I feel guilty or shame for myself of like that person couldn't be further from the Lord. What did I do? Was I terrible? And that's, I think, in the midst of relationships, we have to be aware of the enemy. He's going to attack and try to weasel in. Because God wants us in these relationships. The enemy wants to destroy them. And so it takes work, it takes energy, it takes effort for us and intentionality to really work on these key things as disciples who make disciples. So it's for sure. Yeah,
and I would say on the positive side, when it's done right, and you've got an older, wiser person pouring into you, man, there's protection, there's guidance, there's wisdom, there's strength in that. Man, when you're doing life right with your peers and with people that are in the trenches with you, man, there's encouragement, man, there's strength, there's help. And when you're doing it right, when you're mentoring somebody well and they're receiving well, it's rewarding, man. It's such a blessing. It's such a cool thing to see the Lord work in those relationships, and it's fulfilling, and it's all those things. So, man, it's worth fighting for.
The upside of all of our fears or worries when it comes to these relationships, if you go in, the upside is so much greater. And so don't be afraid of the mess. Embrace it. And it's a powerful thing. So deeper intimacy with the Lord and deeper intimacy with each other, it should draw us even further
for sure
in our journey. So if you're still watching, want more on anything we've talked about with intimacy with the Lord, with deepening our relationship with Him and with others, we have a ton of great resources on Empowered Homes. Just go to empoweredhomes.org/deeper, and you'll find the entire collection of the resources that we put together specifically on this topic with relationships and with God. And I hope you would go on there and be encouraged and be blessed by it. If you have any questions, if you're like, man, how do I start these three? Where do I go? Or if you're in the middle of something and you want some advice, I don't have all the answers. Joe does.
We can.
But
Maybe.
but we would love to walk with you. And so you can email
Certainly.
us at podcast@empoweredhomes.org.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear. And maybe you have a question that we come back in here and we talk about. So whatever it is, Empowered Homes, we just want to be a resource for your home to help encourage you as you lead the next generation. And as we are the next generation, we are the church. And so as the church, we want to be disciples who make disciples. And that's our heart and our desire. So, Joe, thanks for being with us this morning.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you can find all the deeper stuff on empoweredhomes.org/deeper. And you can always email us at what's the podcast at empoweredhomes.org.
There you go.
Thanks, Joe.
No problem, bud.